This album, the album that made Billie Eilish famous and the album that just came out, honestly couldn't be more different. And if we take a deep dive into those differences, I think we'll find something a lot deeper than just music production. What I'm going to try and exhibit in this video is how she's using music production to show more autonomy, more creative control over her music, and also show how she's using music production to show a more genuine, honest version of herself. It's kind of an example of how artists can use production to sort of take control of their own artistic narrative. And it's just a fascinating evolution, so let's jump into it. First thing, let's outline the sound that made Billie famous. Let's take the first album, When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go? And let's first define the instrumentation on that album. Because it's primarily low end, it's primarily bass and drum driven, and this instrumentation is almost always what I'm going to call foundational. It's pocket bass grooves, pocket meaning it's just kind of something you can lay back and dance to and not really notice too much.
That sort of like drum kit, so to speak, it's really about how it coexists with, you know, things like the bass line, because that really is where like the pocket comes in to me.
And most of their purpose is to serve the vocal melody. This is a trope that we have seen done again and again and again in modern music. Instrumentation almost primarily in the bass and low end, and let the vocal take up most of the mid-range and treble information, from Phoebe Bridgers in indie music, Billie Eilish in pop music, and most people in pop music. The old sound is also not shy to distort the low end, filling up some of that harmonic information with a beefier, more compressed, distorted bass sound that might inch into the mid-range.
Throw some sample delay, throw some clip distortion on it, throw some Valhalla room, some channel EQ, little altar boy. Nasty.
Beyond just that instrumentation, most of the other harmonic information in the song is Billie's own vocal. Just hundreds of layers sometimes. This fills out the mid-range and the treble, and oftentimes gives the chordal and melodic information. We're hearing the chord progression and the main melody in Billie's vocal. In other words, there's Billie's voice and everything else. When We All Fall Asleep is also known for its use of found sounds. This involves replacing traditional instruments with sounds you might hear in your everyday environment. In the case of Bad Guy,
So when you're on a street corner in Australia, you press the button, and then when the walk sign turns on, you hear this like rhythmic sound that I love and that Billie loved, and so we recorded it, and it sounds like this. Yeah, the thing people think are hi-hats in Bad Guy is actually just that.
Duh. Let's recreate the Bad Guy beat using sounds from the sponsor of today's video, Fume. Fume has a twistable fidget element, so let's use that as our traffic light sound. If I remove the wooden enclosure where you can put a bunch of flavored air cores in, it makes a perfect hi-hat. By the way, there's no nicotine in this, it's literally just flavored air. It's for breaking bad habits. And it has a bunch of ways to fidget with it if you ever get anxious from a craving or something like that. And then finally, let's use the magnetic bass to make a snare and a kick sound. Duh. Hopefully this shows you how you can make a really cool beat out of just stuff lying around your house. And Fume has served over 150,000 customers to help get rid of bad habits. If you want to give it a try, you can use my code AudioHaze to get a free magnetic bass with the purchase of their Journey Pack. And that's at tryfume.com or with the link in the description. When We All Fall Asleep usually, because I'm trying not to speak in too many absolutes, usually has a pretty defined set of rules for the vocal. Sing softly with plenty of breath to capture a gentle vocal sound.
Once the water starts to rise and heaven's out of sight, she'll want the devil on her team.
Sing really close to a condenser microphone in order to get this sort of blown up, larger than life effect to that quiet, gentle vocal sound.
Why do people belt?
It sounds
Awful.
It sounds great.
Sounds stupid.
No, it sounds great.
Ugh.
You don't have to belt.
I don't find the internet when I do it.
No, you're not.
The internet's going to be mean if I do it.
I don't think so.
Layer everything up with a bunch of harmonies, a bunch of doubles, ad-libs to make the vocals sound as big and as prominent as possible.
She's such a, like, just incredible harmonizer.
Don't talk about me like I might know how I feel.
Sing those melodies in kind of a darker lullaby kind of style, and that's kind of the Billie Eilish sound, in an overly simplified way, of course. These videos take a lot of time and a lot of research, so if you enjoyed it, just drop in a like and the subscribe thing, mainly to help YouTube understand that this is a good video. And it means a lot, so thank you so much. But Hit Me Hard and Soft is kind of a different animal, and what Billie and Finneas are doing on this record contrasts what both of them did on the first record. What we're seeing on Hit Me Hard and Soft is not just an evolution in production style. We're witnessing Finneas's evolution as a producer. He's leaving this pocket-driven, bass-centric, foundational production style, and we're also seeing Billie have more creative confidence on her vocal technique, on her vocal delivery, and on the mixing and production style. She's taking more control over her own artistry. Let's talk about Finneas first, because there are a few clues in recent interviews that show this change in how he approaches production. We're gonna lump a lot of the media from What Was I Made For into this discussion as well, because I think it's pretty important to point out.
I'm always trying to hide stuff. I'm a terrible visual artist, but like when you see a great painting and it's 190 different shades and it doesn't look like 190 shades, it looks like a sunset. And that to me is the approach with all music productions. Like if you're thinking about it, I have failed, but if you're just absorbing it, then it's a success.
Now, if you watch early interviews about how Finneas produced that first album for Billie, you'll notice that he has a very minimalist perspective.
I love minimalism. I love simplicity. So anything that's just like a wonderful foundation for other things to develop is really exciting to me.
There's such an emphasis on the efficiency behind the instrumentation and how it should always serve the vocal. I would almost describe a lot of these newer productions and all these new interviews that Finneas has been doing as kind of more of a world building experiment than this minimalist approach. There's a lot of emphasis on really small textures that all add up to be felt more so than consciously heard.
Like you're playing your normal song and you're destroying your song with this like, you know, butt rock guitar part. And you know, as a producer that you're like, I'm gonna chuck it as far in the background as humanly possible.
Well, no one would ever like think that that's in
But
there.
it adds energy.
So much, yeah.
There's just energy that's providing.
Now, I'm not really trying to say that Finneas is now a maximalist and he used to be a minimalist. I still think he's very much in the minimalist camp, especially with this sentiment that his work really shouldn't be consciously noticed. If you take a moment to think about any of the instrumentation, then in his words,
If you're thinking about it, I have failed.
But one thing that we are seeing Finneas and Billie move away from is this bass-focused pocket groove. And then having Billie be the vocals in the mid-range and the treble with all these harmonies and chordal information, that formula is taking a step back. Now, most of the clips that have been shown up to this point are from What Was I Made For, but this also applies to the new album. There honestly isn't too much documentation about the new album yet, but Finneas did leave a comment on my last video. So if you see this, let me know if you want to talk about the album, or maybe the album that you are about to release. Let me know. I'm in Brooklyn. Now, there's one thing about this album that I think is really special that separates it from the first and the second album. Billie is taking a lot more creative control whenever it comes to the technical aspects of her musicianship. Okay, so now let's talk about Billie's creative evolution. We've seen a couple of key things be continually reiterated in interviews and all the media that we've seen from this new record.
Billie spent the last album sitting on the couch recording vocals, and Billie spent this album sitting like right here with this microphone, and we just were like
side by side.
Pilots in a airplane.
A lot of times when I was working on vocals and stuff, Finneas was there and I was here.
That's totally
so
true.
We just totally switched spots, which is really sweet.
One is that Billie is just as much a producer on this album as Finneas. There's this insistence that Finneas sits on the couch now, and Billie is either a co-pilot or sitting at the desk herself.
Finneas also like really made a big effort in the process to like let me kind of lead the way in a lot of ways.
100%.
And that was so terrifying at first because
If I go back to the first couple years of like co-writing with anyone, like I wanted to be useful so bad. I wanted Billie to come over and feel like I had value. But I think it was a funny shift in our dynamic
it was
where
very different.
I'd be sitting there playing and Billie would be like, "You're not even saying anything." And I'd be like, "Wait." And then what would happen, and it was so beautiful, and Skinny is the best example of this, is like
Yes.
you wait and you wait and you wait. And then Billie says something that's so great. And then I know exactly how to help. I know exactly where the missing thing is because we're so on the same page with it.
And I think that this was like the first day really that I was able to be honest. And I was like scared, to be honest, before that.
Now we've seen this manifest in very measurable ways. How she chooses to sing, where she's putting her vocal in the mix, the techniques that she's using to even resample mixes, even some lo-fi resampling techniques, and we'll get into that. But first I want to talk about this concept of fear or fart.
So it's a game called Fear or Fart.
Right.
Okay. We started playing like some music, and I remember Phineas going like, this guy liked the smell of his own fart. And then we were going through all these albums that we know and kind of labeling them as like, oh, did this person like their smell their own farts when they were in the middle of making this?
Right.
And then we got to some people and I was like, what about them? And Phineas goes, no, that's fear.
If I could kind of give my own interpretation of what this means, it's kind of fear-driven or ego-driven songwriting, and neither of which are good or bad. Fart is kind of the celebration of self. It's almost like having a sense of pride and ego behind your music, and that's fine.
Here's the caveat. Both could be good
Both
or
are
bad.
amazing or terrible.
There's been some great farts.
You can, yeah, 100%. You can make it and be like, I'm so awesome.
I'm
And
on
it can be
fire.
good. And also sometimes it can get in the way and it can, you know, promote some like laziness or
equally-
whatever.
Fear is the expression of a less confident sentiment, embracing insecurity and hoping it will be received well.
Fear can super get in your own way and prevent you from taking risks.
Fear is like, second guessing yourself and not feeling like you totally know what you're doing.
And in Billy's case, I think there is this desire to play a less prideful character and show a more authentic version of herself.
When we all fall asleep. Fear.
100% fear.
We determined that Happier Than Ever is the fart album of ours.
It was two people who had just been told the nicest things imaginable. And I know from remembering it that we sat around being like,
This is
we
amazing.
are so,
You're so good.
And
And what's interesting is that Hit Me Hard and Soft is almost the reverse of that, where we were making it and it was like, we were kind of like this the whole time, like, I don't know if we're making anything good. Like, this might be terrible.
Right.
And then now when I think about it, I'm like, yeah, but I'm comfortable in who I am now. And I feel like I know who I am now. I think that this album is like the most me thing that I've ever made. And I think that it's so purely me and not any sort of character.
Now, this is important not just for understanding the lyrical content and the songwriting behind the album, the meaning of the songs, but we can see this manifest in how the song is recorded. Fear and honesty, they can be represented with how you mix and record a vocal, where you put that vocal in a mix, how produced and loud and compressed it sounds. Let's say you record a raw vocal and you make the reverb like the locker room of a high school, or you make the reverb a massive cathedral.
Standing at the pinnacle, defeated, deprived of what you always needed. One more time.
One of those is gonna have a bit more fart in it. Do you know what I mean? If I could have a little bit of a tangent here, I think people view music production as a means to make a song sound as good as possible. But don't forget that production is unbreakably tied to the meaning of a song. It should serve the artistic intention, not just make things sound as pretty or as glossy or as shiny as they can. So let's get into how Billie is doing this. Check out this clip where Billie is talking about her vocal technique on What Was I Made For.
I was trying to do a very specific thing with my voice, which was this like very soft, held back, upper range falsetto. I could have belted it, I could have sung it more out, I could have sung it in like more of a choral, like choir type da 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 da, and instead it was like a da 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 da.
Billie is choosing to be breathy. She's choosing a vocal mix and a vocal tone to better suit the song, even when other techniques would be easier. But we can compare that to a song like Birds of a Feather from the new album, where she made the same decision, but actually decided a full chest voice belt would suit the song better.
That's like the highest I've ever belted in my life. I was in here alone in the dark period of time. And I was just like, I am gonna get this right. And I was recording that like, till the day that I die, till the light leaves my eyes. And then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna try something. Okay,
Take it home.
Till the day. And I'm like, I die. I could just hold it, or I could go, till the day I die. And then I was like, dude, I'm gonna have to keep going. And I literally.
When We All Fall Asleep basically had the same approach to vocals throughout the entire record. It's a formula that worked exceedingly well for them, but it was one formula. But what we're seeing now is Billie have much more intentionality behind what song gets what vocal timbre, and that will also extend into the instrumentation as well.
She got better and better at knowing, like, I liked this take and I liked this word from this take and like this word. And so I just was like, well, let me teach you how to do this. It's not that hard. And so I taught her how to record herself and how to comp herself. One of the reasons I did it is because I've always recorded alone, and there's stuff that I am just not brave enough to do in front of somebody else. I think that really shines on this album, is like a person, even without their collaborator in the room, doing the bravest thing ever.
She's doing things like comping her own vocals, but she's also doing things like picking mix decisions for those vocals as well, which we'll get into in just a second. More creative autonomy has led to more of Billie's own sensibilities show up in this mix, specifically this commitment to lo-fi recording. Chihiro was recorded on a handheld microphone on the couch in the studio while the speakers were blaring the instrumental.
All the vocals on Chihiro were in the room with this, with like the feedback from the speakers in the room. These speakers were just, we didn't use headphones, and it's a really, really, really useful writing tool for me.
Check out the isolated vocals from Chihiro.
Kinda strange, feeling sorrow. I got change. Yep, you could borrow.
You can hear the instrumentation bleed into the vocal, which is usually a big no-no whenever it comes to pop records. Chihiro also has a vocal that sits so much further back than we're used to hearing in a Billie record. It's kind of quieter than the bass that surrounds it.
We kept cleaning it up too much and then putting dirt all over it
We
again.
would clean it up and be like, this is better when it's raw.
One of Billie's cool, like, lo-fi things that we do, I'll be like, do you want me to bounce this today? She'll go, no, it's okay. And she'll film the computer screen. Then I would bounce it. And Billie would be like, it sounds really sterile. Like it doesn't have a slap.
I want it to sound like my phone.
So the beat on that song I reamped. So I like set up mics in the room and then played it through the room.
This is kind of a recurring theme on the new album, where the first record was like 25% instrumentation and 75% vocals. It's much more of an even split on this record. And then you get to the bridge of Chihiro, and it's this massive arpeggiated part that would feel so out of place on the first record. It's kind of embracing more of a proggy nature that would never have been in the question before, and I love to see it. The vocals no longer everything. And quite frankly, we've seen that trope played out in pop music over the last 5 to 6 years pretty intensely anyways, so it's cool to see something else. So if we just take a step back here, we're seeing somewhat of an antithesis to the first album. Phineas's approach is evolving more from pocket-driven minimalist production to world building. This allows for instrumentation that has more nuance and complexity and layers to it. Some parts of the album that are fully instrumental, think of the Chihiro bridge. This has resulted in a record that relies more heavily on instrumentation. And then Billie's varying use of vocal techniques, the fact that she's comping the vocal herself, this all leads to a vocal sound that's much more tailored to the individual song. It also allows her to have more creative autonomy, more self-expression in how she uses her voice. So all of these interviews that she's doing where she's talking about how this is her in an album, that she's expressing herself, we can see that in the production as well. It is fear, not fart.
I was like, wait, this is my passion in life. And I love doing this so much. And also, I'm really good at it. I'm a professional musician, apparently. Apparently.
So if you could just take one thing away from this video, I would want it to be, if you learned about how to produce your own music rather than relying on a studio or a producer, or just admitting that you can't do it. If you just take some time to understand how to EQ a vocal, how to mix a vocal, what sounds and techniques you like from your favorite records and the ones you don't, it is so rewarding. Because you can link the stylistic production elements with the intentionality and the lyrical content and the meaning behind the song. They gel and they mesh together. Control your narrative. I know music tech can be intimidating, and there are plenty of elitists out there. Just look at most recent comments. You'll probably find some. But just how taking the co-pilot chair allowed Billie to make an album that better represented her as a person, it can do the same for you. Anyways, thank you to Fume for sponsoring today's video. Hope you enjoyed, and thank you so much.